A thread by Carlos Osuida. Why can't the protesters stop the extremists? Because the protesters are the extremists. Not one of them is acting in good faith. Not one. This is a response video to Tim Pool's "Trump is winning the propaganda war over BLM rioting." Nobody marches when black cops kill white suspects. Nobody marches when any cop kills white suspects. The protests are not sincere. They are a power grab, and every single person there knows it. The protests are highly choreographed. The umbrellas hide the preparations of the people throwing explosives and cans or bottles of frozen liquid and sharpened PVC pipes and aiming lasers. I laugh at the NAACP blaming white liberals for turning this into a spectacle. Black Lives Matter is a radical Marxist organization. The NAACP itself is a leftist activist organization. This implosion was a long time coming, and it's well-deserved. Leftists cynically preyed on good-hearted, low-information people who think we all want the same thing. We do not. The same argument is made about the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Iranian mullahs want hegemony. And I've never heard anyone actually address this simple fact. Radical Marxists, Islamists, and fascists are so violent because they like it. Mentally stable people are not drawn to ideologies or organizations that use extreme violence as a tool. Joseph Stalin liked committing mass murder. So did Hitler. So did the Ayatollah Khomeini. So did Pol Pot. It gives them pleasure. We are not all the same. Nobody gives a hoot about police brutality directed at white people. That simple fact negates the entire premise of these quote-unquote protests. And the same people marching for Black lives do everything they can to keep Black people down. Look at this. From Breitbart.com, Natalie Portman, Joaquin Phoenix lead Hollywood call to defund police. White, leftist, multimillionaires want low-income Black Americans to have no protection from criminals. Isn't that nice? You could tie those two scumbags to chairs and show them every fact and figure there is, but they wouldn't change their so-called minds. Years ago, I found this on my front porch. For those of you just listening, it's an expended slug. Then I found this. This one's from an AR-15. We heard gunshots every single night. Now, none at all. President Trump stopped it. The feds were sent in. What happens to neighborhoods run by the people who Natalie Portman and Joaquin Phoenix support? Those people die. Their lives don't matter. This was never about Black lives. It's a Marxist power grab. BLM and Antifa made common cause. Leftist Christians encourage illegal immigration. Along the way to our southern border, every female is raped. Children are sold to sex traffickers. Men and boys are made into drug mules and or members of cartels. Miguel Trevino Morales was the former leader of Los Zetas. He wasn't able to sleep unless he murdered somebody that day. He once stuffed 150 Central American migrants into 55-gallon drums, 5 per drum, poured in gasoline, and set them on fire. Alive. When the migrants get here, they become slaves or sex workers. Tell that to a leftist Christian, they don't care. We don't all want the same things. The reason Trump supporters have been attacked on all levels for 5 straight years is that we want the suffering to end. That makes us deadly enemies. And don't kid yourselves, the majority of the country is behind Trump. The beginning of the protests was a lie, but the protesters convinced themselves that mayhem was a successful strategy, so they ramped it up. The Democrats and the Reagan Foundation are giving the urban terrorists the impression that they're winning. Dan Crenshaw is giving the urban terrorists the impression that they're winning. These people all want to go back to the good old days of government reaming us and enriching politicians and special interests. Not going to happen. Our lives are sacrificed in the name of money, power, decorum. Trump is just not acting presidential. He's mean. He's a potty mouth. I don't like him. The stakes have never been higher. You can choose to live in squalor with a presidential, two-faced, lying, sociopath scumbag making you feel all warm and cozy by saying nice things. I choose Trump. He's the most presidential president we've ever had. In what way? He's doing his job brilliantly. All the others, with the exception of Washington and Lincoln, were flops. It wasn't Lincoln's fault, but he was deeply mentally ill. He had suicidal ideation. This is a real poem that he wrote. Suicide's Soliloquy by Abraham Lincoln. Here, where the lonely hooting owl sends forth his midnight moans, fierce wolves shall o'er my carcass growl, or buzzards pick my bones. No fellow man shall learn my fate or where my ashes lie, unless by beasts drawn round their bait, or by the raven's cry. Yes, I've resolved the deed to do, and this the place to do it. This heart I'll rush a dagger through, though I in hell should rue it. Hell, what is hell to one like me who pleasures never knew? By friends consigned to misery, by hope deserted too, to ease me of this power to think that through my bosom raves, I'll headlong leap from hell's high brink and wallow in its waves. Though devils yell and burning chains may waken long regret, their frightful screams and piercing pains will help me to forget. Yes, I'm prepared through endless night to take that fiery birth. Think not with tales of hell to fright me, who am damned on earth. Sweet steel, come forth from out your sheath, and glistening speak your powers. Rip up the organs of my breath, and draw my blood in showers. I strike, it quivers in that heart which drives me to this end. I draw and kiss the bloody dart, my last, my only friend. That's a troubled guy. Moving on. Carlos continues, and Washington was so presidential that he allowed his enemies to define him. He stayed, quote unquote, above the fray, creating the self-defeating tradition of presidents never defending themselves. Trump is normal. Refusing to fight back is abnormal. I'll end with an allegory that I mentioned before. The French Revolution created the spectacle of decapitating people with the guillotine in public. Noblemen and women went to their deaths calmly and with great dignity. This is why the executions were so popular. The only person to fight for her life was Jeanne Bécu, Comtesse du Barry. The tradition was to take the condemned from the prison to the guillotine in an open cart through the crowds. Madame du Barry fought every inch of the way. It took several men to restrain her. She screamed so loudly that she could be heard 5 miles away. Why are you doing this? Why are you people letting them do this? Stop them. Somebody save me. I did nothing. Help me. For God's sake, help me. It was almost impossible to tie her to the board. She stopped screaming only when her head was cut off. And that was when public opinion turned against the guillotine. The very act of being presidential made the public think that guillotining wasn't a big deal. Heck, they aren't fighting back. How bad could it be? People accepted kangaroo courts and a frenzy of slaughter for no reason other than primitive bloodlust. One woman fighting back changed it all. She saved the dumbass public from itself. Although she died, her death was not in vain. You think Trump is not presidential? If I were president, I'd be leaving everyone's ears on fire. I'd have no breaks at all. Trump controls himself. He knows when to dish it out, but he also knows how far to take it. Trump isn't ruled by rage the way I am. Trump isn't a voluntary hermit the way I am. Currently, I'm being stalked by someone who refused to respect my desire to be left alone. She says she's the same way, so we need to get together. I haven't answered a single message from her. Now, she's sending me letters she wrote to prove how trustworthy she is. Always be on the lookout for patterns. We use the term con artist, which was once confidence artist. Last night, I learned the origin. Samuel Thompson was the first confidence artist. He lived from 1821 to 1856. He would approach strangers on the street and claim that he knew them. He'd learn their name before pulling the stunt. When they said they didn't know him, he'd pretend to be crushed. This made the victim feel bad. Thompson would tell the person they could show their confidence in him by giving him a large sum of money or their watch, and he'd come back in a couple of hours to return it. Believe it or not, this worked. So now, I'm being told to trust someone who's ignoring my desire to be left alone. It's another predator. When someone tries to force their will on you, they're up to no good. I'm sure she's reading this. Don't show up here, honey. Got that? I'm not afraid. Stalkers come and go. They always end up going if they push me too hard. As I say, I have no brakes. I'm a hermit, mostly to protect others. If they don't believe me, that's not my problem. Too many people refuse to accept reality. When a guy takes multiple medications to control his rage and wants to be left alone, that's real. He's not pretending. When he says he has no connection to anybody and wants none, that's real. You don't mess with him. And Trump's success is real too. Social media and the press and the Democrats are not real. Our first real president is on the job.